Hey guys, it's SD, your host of the Life Fix Relationship podcast, where people with all sorts of backgrounds, challenges, and life experience show us how they make their relationship extraordinary.
Hey guys, hope you're having an awesome day. Today, I am so excited for two reasons. First of all, our guest is incredible. You will love her. I'm going to tell you about her in a minute. But the second reason I'm so excited is because it's 1 year since we started this podcast. Yes, Friday, February 26th, a year ago was when we started this, and this could not have happened without you. Thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in every week, twice a week, giving your feedback, sharing your comments, telling me what you want, what you do like, what you don't like. This only happened because of you. Thank you so much. Now, for today's guest, I'm super excited because whenever we have a conversation, it's just a real good conversation. And I know this will be no different. Tiffeny Farag is the host of the Get to Know You podcast, which has a really cool format. Every week, there's a question that she answers together with a guest. Then the next week, there's a different guest on the podcast answering the questions listeners have on the previous episode. So if you have a question, you send it in to her, and then the next week they'll answer it and they will go on an even deeper discussion. So what ends up happening is you get really deep into these conversations and hear all different perspectives from all different people. It is so cool. I've been on our podcast quite a few times, both as a guest answering questions the first time and as a guest the second time answering listeners' questions. It's super cool, and check it out. So today, we get to finally have her on the Life Fix Relationship podcast. Thank you so much, Tiffeny, for being here. I'm so excited for this. I know this is going to be incredible because all our conversations are. Now let's start with what you're so good at, getting people to know themselves and to get to know others. Now, if someone wants to know someone else, if someone wants to know their partner, the first thing they have to do is get to know themselves, right? How do you go about that?
Well, what I really think here is like the really great place to start is really kind of understanding like your personality. So like what makes up your personality, how that impacts your core values, and then how that kind of affects your body. I think that's a really great kind of place to really understand yourself better in getting to know other people. So what really comes to mind there is like people think when you're getting to know your personality, you think like doing the the Myers-Briggs test, the 16 personality test, the Enneagram and things like that. But let's not focus and let's be more specific about certain like personality traits or even situations of understanding kind of yourself or what you would do in different scenarios. So like even like relative to your partner, kind of knowing when to interject in a conversation. Are you the type, let's take it away from the partner for a bit. If you're like, say you're in a situation where you're meeting new people, are you the type of person to just dive in there and just, what's your approach? When do you enter a conversation? And then obviously these things and dynamic changes the more you get to know a person or the less you know them. So that's the kind of the place where I'd like to start is like where you really understand your personality and where it impacts in conversation, particularly and getting to know your own self or getting to know other people. So then like you look at this and then you think of like your core values. So what's in your core values are going to vary from person to person. People think, oh, I'm with somebody because we have the same values. Not all of the values will be the same. What your core values will be are going to be still, I think, very different from another person's core values. So like maybe the way you want to bring up your children, that will vary significantly and you bump heads and you're just like, well, I think it's okay for the child to do this, this and that. And you're like, well, I don't agree with you. So really trying to understand your core values. And your core values, like I said, will stem from your personality and your personality traits. People don't kind of connect those things together. And then in saying that, it really see how it affects your body. See, when you have your core values are maybe tested or challenged, your body reacts. Your face reacts. I'm a very expressive person, as you can see through the video, and my hands are moving quite a lot. But not everybody does that. Some people react by maybe I'm going to take a step back now, or react by, closing their arms, putting their arms together. How are they reacting? So what are you challenging in someone's values that's allowing their body to move and react? Or even look at the reaction of a body relative to a woman being near a man as well, or a man that she doesn't know, or the time of the day, and a man is kind of close to her, depending on the time of day, and her reaction to a man during the day will be different to the night, depending on the environment that she's in. Let's say she's walking home at night, obviously that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so I think that understanding those three things there is really a great basis to really kind of understand yourself. What do you do in these things? What do you do in these scenarios to then further get to know another person?
Yeah, it's really interesting how you said that your values are based on your personality, because a lot of times people think it's based on how you grew up. Does that have any effect on it?
How you grew up, sure, absolutely. Like, I guess your personality it plays a role. Like, they say your personality is kind of made up like 5 years old, and there's like, well, you've got your kind of core personality there once, which I found quite interesting. But then you're molded based on your environment that you're in, but then you remold yourself once you leave that environment. So you don't, I'm sure you don't. Do you believe all the things that are, let's say, right and wrong, or if you remember back to doing something a certain way when you were younger and then doing it now, it's changed, yes?
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm sure throughout the recent years, like you're in your early 20s, you're remolding yourself, and you're continuing to remold yourself. There are certain traits that really stick to you. Like, let's say you're somebody who likes to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
When you're getting to know a person, you really put yourself out there. That's part of your personality. And I think that's quite core to that. I don't think that's something you're going to stop doing.
Right. Now, how does that personality play with my values? Let's say the fact that I ask tons of questions and I'm really curious. What does that have to do with my values?
Well, that key there really shows that you're a person with a lot of, that you have a lot of depth. So a superficial conversation for you is like, that's not part of your personality. You don't engage in it. Small talk for you is something that you don't really see much value in it. That is a core part of your personality, and that's something you value. So you value depth in a relationship, and then that carries out into what part of your personality.
Yeah. Okay, so if someone wants to identify those values, how should they go and do that? And also, is there like a limit to how many, say, like, don't expect to have like 200 values, but rather only 3?
So I guess like with that, like your values are going to, I don't think it's like a matter of 4 or 5 core values. It's like, what are your values in the situation? What are your values in this kind of season, in this moment? What are your values in this stressful time, if I'm being more specific? Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. It's not, okay, I believe this, but rather how I'm behaving in this specific situation.
Yeah, so I think it needs to be broken down even further. So, like, you could kind of say, like, well, what are my values in not necessarily just the relationship, because a relationship has all these different breakdowns. But let's say, how do I want to bring up my children? Now, that can differ in, like, the values you have for your children can differ from the values you have for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I see that all the time with people. They want their kids to be perfect and they have these specific ways they want their kids to be, but for themselves, they excuse it all.
Exactly. There's always like, oh, I don't need that. I don't need that. They need it, but I don't need it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so if you identify your values, which takes a lot of time really, because you really have to think about it and see yourself in many different situations, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Then, okay, so once you identify it, now how do you go and use it to relate to your partner?
When you're identifying your values, I think the key here is not trying to use your values to relate to your partner, but it's a matter of what are their values. And this is the part of, like, getting to know them. Like, what makes up it's really to do with a lot of questions you need to ask your partner, and not projecting your own values and understanding another person. And kind of need to give them the floor and the space to kind of tell you what is important to them in that moment of time, with whatever need that they want or need, their values, or what is considered in their body. Let's take their intimacy with one another. Not just, I know it's not just sexual, but what they need in that respect too. It's you wanna see what's important to them, but not just a matter of what they want as well, but what they need. See, if you kind of dissect it and probe them a bit and really allow them to kind of, I know what you want. Okay, I'll just give you what you want. Because a lot of people say, what do you want? I want this. And that doesn't really fix the situation. It's like, no, you're not really listening to me. So it's
Yeah.
not even that. It's like, well, hang on. Don't ask what you want, but really push for what they need. But to really try and probe the other person, I think that's like a real key here that a lot of people don't do. Like, instead of taking, like, say, this vertical approach, why do you want this? Or what do you want? How would this make you feel if I gave you this? Or, do you understand? Like, kind of go around it in a way, and then you kind of figure out what they actually need.
Yeah,
Because I think a lot of the time people don't even know that.
yeah, it makes them have to think in a different way. They're like thinking, okay, what do I need? I need A. But they're not thinking about B, C, D, and E until you go and bring them questions from a different perspective.
Exactly. Like, they're not thinking like, oh, I think too, even if you're in a relationship for 10 years, for a lot of people, being vulnerable and saying, I need this right now, I think a lot of people still aren't unable to do that, or married for 20 years or 25 years, and really show that vulnerability of, I really need this at this time. So that's why I think the approach of not what do you want, because even in moments of like intensity, or what you want could be like, you just say the quickest thing that comes to your mind, and that's not really what you truly need. That's going to kind of nourish and really allow you to get to know your partner.
When you're asking these questions, but you have to be really careful that you're not assuming that this person needs that, because I could totally see people asking, how do you feel about this? And they're going to come already thinking that that's going to make that person feel good. So whatever they say is going to be translated in their brain that this is good. You're rather coming with a really open mind and listening, besides to their actual answer, to everything that's not being said, all their body language and facial expressions.
Absolutely. Like, you don't want to, like, it's not exactly what you said. Don't make assumptions, but like, based on what they're telling you, and maybe in the moment they're not able to be, calm, kind of work with what is being said to you to try and see, narrow in on what is not being said. And like, a lot of the time you say what you're really angry about, and you really sit with it, and then all these other things come up, and it's like, whoa, that's not what I'm angry about at all. I'm upset about this. And I think a lot of the time too, you don't figure that out when you're in that moment with the person. You figure that out by yourself. Let's take when you're meditating, for example. Like, I meditate and throughout yoga, and in the beginning of yoga, sometimes I do when I'm really angry about something, really upset about something, and then by the end of the hour, I'm like, oh, that's not the trigger here. This is the trigger.
Yeah, because there's the thing that's right in front of us, that's the thing that we assume, but we have to look underneath. That's why, going back to that journaling, that conversation that we had on your podcast of writing with your non-dominant hand, you could get to that core of it, because then you don't have the logic speaking, but rather your non-dominant hands, your subconscious speaking. So you get your answers through that. Yeah. So, okay. So someone who is like new to this, they usually just ask, what do you need? Or maybe not even to ask that, and they want to start asking these questions. What tips or advice would you give them to start asking the right questions?
Well, I think to ask the right questions, you kind of need to really think about, advice number one is, you need to actively listen. You need to truly actively listen and really want to kind of get away from the superficial small talk, because a lot of the time when you're truly trying to get to know another person, sometimes there's a lot of fear of the vulnerability there. So a lot of people just stay on the small talk. So you want to like almost get away from that straight away. Like I don't think me and you've had any small talk throughout all
No.
of our conversations or me getting, we haven't had any small talk. We never
This
started with
doesn't
small talk.
work.
And that's
Well, it started with you first asking so many questions. And I'm like, whoa, okay, I see now someone who does what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to, I flipped it back on you. You're not used to that. And usually too, the people who tend to ask a lot of questions are actually the ones who are afraid of them, people asking them back.
Yeah,
Like
it's
it
true.
really fits around like, oh, now I'm more vulnerable here.
I'll tell you why,
So
I think.
those people why do you think?
Because when I ask someone like you who asks tons of questions, then as soon as I ask one question, you're going to start asking me questions back. So it's not like me asking you questions the whole time. So the people who don't ask questions just end up getting tons of them and are like attacked by them all.
Exactly. And we can do that for so long. Like how many people, we just keep asking the questions and no one's gonna flip it back on us. So it's kind of, sometimes it works in a way to protect ourselves. But yeah, so I think here, even before that, what I really find that's truly important here, and people don't tend to think about this, is that what emotions do you want another person to feel for leaving a conversation with you? What is the feeling you want them to feel during the conversation and leaving the conversation? Like those conversations that I have, like with yourself, where we're getting to know each other and we're going through all these different things, and I'm learning more about you and that. And I leave the conversation going, I want to have another conversation with this person. I cannot wait for the next time. And the feeling that I have from is like, I cannot wait to have another conversation with you. Now you need to make that your intention in going into any conversation when you truly want to get to know the person. And I think a lot of people don't tend to like think about that or focus on that at all. And how do you want to feel? Not just how you want to make them feel, but how do you want to feel? How do you want someone who leaves a conversation with you? How do you want them to feel? Going, oh, do I want to come back and speak? Do they want to come back and speak to you? Is that the feeling you want to give off, or do you want to give off? Oh, that's a lot of things. I think a lot of people kind of more project the energy of, yeah, I don't want them to talk to me again. Kind of, that's how they have a conversation. Like, yeah, I'll have a conversation, but I don't want them to come back to me. But I think that's the mentality and basis that you need to have when you're getting to know others. And then I think from there, other than, really observing the conversation, like I said, observe the physical, what's happening there, and actively listening to what's being said and not being said. But another key thing here, which I think a lot of people don't do, and I know it really helps you when you're relating in certain situations, but in many more than others, is how do you not center yourself in the conversation?
Ooh,
So
that's
when I'm
hard.
talking about that is very hard. And I think you need to be called out on it as well. So when I'm having a conversation with you and I'm telling you something about myself, can you not bring up your own story or relation to the topic and stay focused with me and my story? Because what happens when I'm talking about myself and I'm like, oh, I see this and that about me, I'm getting a bit excited telling you my own story, which we all do, which is normal. Like that's normal, right? Now, by you just flipping it and telling me, adding your addition to it because you've had a similar experience, the energy or the dynamic, it's like, oh, okay. Do you see what happens?
Yeah. It's like, okay, now you're not interested anymore.
Yeah, so it really changes. So instead it's like, well, no, show full attention and probe the other person and stay present in the conversation without bringing yourself into it. So that's a real, I obviously have, I make a mistake too. It's normal. But I think like a key here, if you're able to practice it, like say, for example, you're speaking to a friend of yours, hey, and before you start talking with them, going, hey, if I mention myself in this conversation, or even your partner, if I talk about myself or try and relate to you, tell me in the moment I'm doing it. I want to try not to do it right now.
Hold
I
on,
want to
but
pay full attention to you.
how do you then, that sounds like then you never talk about yourself.
Not never, but when it's like, let's say there's a problem or
Okay.
there's something the person wants, a friend is venting to you, or there's a worry or things like that, they want your full attention.
Right. Okay.
In those moments.
Yeah. So when there's like important, like let's say they want to vent or you're working out something.
Mm.
Okay. Now I really agree with that. I just have this massive thing that I always get told by people that I need to share more about myself during these times so that way they could be more they'll feel more relatable to me. What's the answer to that?
Sure, sure. I absolutely agree. And that's when you're in the beginning of getting to know someone. You need to show the vulnerability there. And a lot of that really shows in like even in not just like dating or relationships or just casual setting, even in a professional setting too. So I don't know if you know this, but a lot of research and a lot of studies really show that the more vulnerability is a critical leadership trait. When you're able to say your boss or someone who's higher, in the employment field than you and says, "Oh, I really made a mistake here, guys. It's my mistake. How can we as a team fix this together?" Or, "Sorry, guys, I've had some personal things going on in the last week. This and this happened, but I'm really present with you now." And really just kind of it definitely is a key and invulnerability in getting things done. And it really allows for, trust. You're establishing trust. And I highly agree with that. And you're establishing even in like the work environment, like I said, like innovation and creativity and kind of like really growing that. And that stems into all other aspects too, like when you're newly getting to know a person or in a relationship setting. But when you're in a solid relationship and you've known the person for so long, that's when I think not centering yourself will play a better role in you understanding your partner, and then flip it back. For today, it's me not centering myself in the conversation. It's about you. Or for this conversation, it's about you. And then take turns in doing that.
Yeah, yeah, depending on the situation.
Mm.
Just to clarify for myself, once you have that relationship with someone, okay, it's not a new person and you've already been vulnerable many times, and they come to you and share with you, they're venting, they're working at a problem, then you don't need to, especially, you're not speaking about yourself. Like you said, you don't talk about yourself and make yourself the center, even to be relatable, because they're already related to you in the conversation. So you don't need that. Instead, it just focused on them.
Exactly. Focus on them. That will allow you to get to know them. That's what the core aspect here. And so in that aspect, you're playing the role of probing the other person to empower themselves. That's your role in a partner, a big role that you should be playing, not being, telling the person what to do. I think a lot of people, we've spoken about this before, like they think they lean on the partner, "Oh, tell me what to do. I need to do this or do that." That's not the approach I think you should be taking. You should be taking the approach of really probing the person to empower themselves.
Yeah, yeah, 1000%. So what sort of questions should you be asking?
So I would really take this approach by asking what and how questions. And be careful when you're asking why questions. Don't say, "Why do you feel like that?" That's not really like it's too like
It's also that makes the other person get defensive before anything.
exactly. It's like, "Whoa, but this is why I feel like that, blah, blah, blah." And you get heated. It's like, well, maybe what is making you feel this way? Or what happened that made you feel like this?
And then asking questions based on their answers and going
I,
deeper on that.
exactly. And instead, like I said, especially in a relationship, why do you feel like that? Instead of doing that and taking this kind of lateral approach by asking what and how questions, you're not in the fire. It's not me against you.
Yeah.
It's that's what creates, us or you against the problem.
Right. It's like you're in this thing together and we're trying to figure it out.
Exactly. Exactly. And we're breaking it down here and you're probing them and you want to leave your partner, especially when there's something wrong or you're feeling a certain way. You don't want them to feel broken at the end of the conversation. You don't want them to feel down at the end of the conversation. Is that the goal here? You don't want to be like, "Yes, I won. I made them feel like shit." That's not the goal here. It's like they're feeling this way. It's probably, and I don't agree with it, or maybe I feel a different way towards it. But let's see how I can empower them to kind of have an understanding or look at it differently or fix the problem themselves
Right, right, right.
relative to whatever situation it may be.
Yeah, themselves is a really important key, because the point isn't to take responsibility for their lives, but rather empower them to go and do it for themselves and just almost like guide them into the right direction that they want to go in. not in the direction you want them to go in, but in the direction that they want to go in, which could be really hard
Exactly.
if you completely disagree on what they're doing.
Of course. But you can still play the card of, well, why are you thinking like this? Not why, but like, well, let me
What's causing,
understand
yeah. Let
what's
me
causing
understanding
it.
you. Yeah, it's a good
Yeah,
one.
let me try and understand more, because I think people sit there, you knock heads when you just skim the surface, and it's like you're bumping on something that really isn't what the problem is about.
Literally, yeah, that is what happens. And they're not realizing that there's so much more to the story. There's so much there happening that maybe you just understand what's really going on, then it
Exactly.
would be so different.
Exactly. And the thing too here is a lot of these things are either amplified or there's completely no understanding of what people are considering like normal worries or things like that when it comes to two people from different cultures in a relationship together. Or if you're from different like, religions or races, or, among sexualities or different things like that. When these people come together, like there it's maybe a little bit harder, a little bit more of a shift or a mindset shift. Hey, this is kind of normal for me. It may not be more normal to the other person based on their background and where they're coming from. Because nowadays I think there's more and more mixes cultured relationships that are happening more and more and more. And I'm thinking this is normal for me. It's like that's your normal, that's not their normal. So that's a strong approach that you need to really like always come back to it. Wait. That's not my normal. That's their normal. Really bringing that in every time there's some kind of either dispute or worry or problem or discussion, or it can stem from the silly things also. Like if you're like maybe taking things as an insult, and someone's like, well, that's just joking. Yeah, that's joking in your culture. In my culture, that's an insult.
Yeah.
Let's take, for example, like animals, in my background's Egyptian. And I have friends of mine, so a friend who's from the Arab kind of world, and the other friend is more from the Spanish kind of, and they're in a relationship. And the example here is that in the Spanish culture, and for him and among his family, calling your friends and family different animal names is that's okay. It, like the words for the animals had a different meaning behind them. Like the word donkey, for example, it means like don't be so tough and be like carry things on your shoulders, and that's kind of how the word is used. Whereas in the Arab world, and my other friend, calling somebody a donkey is saying you're stupid.
Yeah.
So, and it's like, and especially too, if using those words in those ways is something that's always on the tip of your tongue, taking it back and going, oh, hang on, I can't do that in my relationship here, because it's not taken in the same kind of context.
Yeah, for sure. Like I know even just where I studied in England for 2 years, and the way they use sarcasm in America and in England, my American friends in England, like they just didn't get the sarcasm that was going on. I didn't either. And then they won't understand what we were speaking sarcastically, because we're both speaking English, but it's such different cultures and speaking so differently.
I get that completely. Some of my American friends say the same thing. They're like, I don't get the British humor. I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
oh my
well,
gosh.
it's
Too
quite
dry.
different. It's all different. And the Australian humor, again, like I'm Australian, like our humor's again a bit different from the Americans and from the Brits. Like it's slightly different again. So, and sometimes you're sitting among each other and you're all speaking English, and obviously we all understand one another. But someone says a joke and you're like, wait, what? Like it's not even what's funny here. It's like, wait, are you saying something out? Like, you might be taking it as an insult.
Yeah.
So it can go that far. So it's like the cultures don't have to be even so far away. Like someone from Greece and someone from Japan. It could be like America and England, and you think they're quite closer,
Yeah.
but
So
really, they're not. They're so not. So it could be, those kinds of relationships. So really have to, I guess, be aware of all those different things. And even when you're, a lot of people like get to know others through similar interests, right? Let's say I watch a really nice biography and I'm like, oh, ST, this movie was incredible. It made me think about this and that. And, you know, how do you think about this and that? And you should watch it. Let's explore this and that. Now, if I'm kind of doing that about this movie, and in this movie they're portraying, for example, Muslims as terrorists or like, you know, bad people, and I'm sharing this same excitement and like a passion that I have for this movie and how it really made me think about this and that, and I'm sharing that with my friend who happens to be of the Muslim religion, you know, and going, well, they won't really want it. That's not relating to them in the same way it's relating to me. So being aware of how you're relating with people on these different things is like a really key and important thing here. Like a lot of people don't think about that.
Yeah, it's trying to find
Or
common.
even like let's take another example of common things. Even if it's not, it's like, well, how is this gonna how does this is this relatable to that person for me to really, you know, show them this side of me or my, I guess, understanding of it or how it's impacting me or changing my thinking, but I'm really wanting to converse with them about the topic. Is it applicable to them, or are they going to be open in this conversation right now? Because they might close up going, oh, this is not really, you're not really, it's repelling them and it's not allowing them to be vulnerable and come with you in that moment. So yeah, so another thing is your like take your social economical class. Like all of us, like, you know, you don't know how much money all your friends are making. You don't know, like, you know, right? You don't know what's going on. Are they living paycheck to paycheck? Are they actually quite comfortable? When you're talking about, oh, let's go eat at this feeling over here, and we really tried this, and it was really great. And you know, you're going on into this story and this experience, but then your friends like be aware of their reaction. It's not matter of maybe like, oh, I don't want to eat there. Oh, I can't eat there. They're not going to tell you, I don't have money to eat there. That's not going to happen.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
really be aware too of these situations, even among the relationship. We don't all depend on our partners or depend on each other financially. Everyone's usually in the relationship, you know, starting off or whatever, and you don't know again the other person's, you know, living situation or whatnot. So
Yeah.
try and really be aware and look at their reaction and not make assumptions as well. In that situation, you wouldn't say, don't you have any money? It's not, that's obviously not something you would say, but
Right.
really be observant and maybe suggest something. You know, you could kind of figure it out by suggesting other places to eat, for example, just with that example, and see if it was more, you know, if it was kind of taken like, oh yeah, let's eat there instead. And you kind of can, you know, figure it out by asking maybe questions, or maybe it depends on how close you are to that person also.
Right. Really depends. So you have to really be aware of when you're talking to them, when you're saying to them, but that doesn't mean not to speak to people who aren't exactly like you.
No, of course.
Just finding the parts that do connect with that person so that way they want to be in the
Or they
conversation with
want
you.
to, exactly, they want to get to know you. They want to be like, oh, I can relate to this person, or, you know, they're truly trying to understand me and not making me feel that I don't fit into the group or I don't fit into their circle.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Now,
yeah, that's a real big key there.
yeah. Okay. Now this is like really interesting. And I don't know if I just did naturally or just part of my personality, but I love getting to know people. But how did you get into this so much so that you're now creating a course on it?
Well, this is something that I'm very, very passionate about because you know, there's so many people that, you know, nowadays are trying to look at like diversity and trying to, you know, people trying different things and people doing different things. And what I've really noticed, although some people like to put themselves out there, they're not really connecting. And people are like, oh, we're connecting on a similar interest. Yeah, but do you really know that person? Now, what I'm finding is that either they don't know how. Actually, in most cases, they don't know how. It's not they don't want to. More so than not, it's that they don't know how to connect with another person. Like experiences of mine, for example, I live in Spain, in Madrid, and I will be in a situation. I'm meeting a group of people, and I sit in a one-on-one with somebody. First time meeting them. After talking with them for like half an hour to an hour, Tiffany, you know me more than this other friend who I've known for 10 years. In the
Wow.
hour that you've been speaking to me, you know me more than her, and I've known her for 10 years. I'm like, it happened multiple times with all these different people from different cultures and things like that. And I'm just like, how? What are you talking about? what's going on here? So it's just, to me, it's like, well, we're not this, people aren't asking each other real questions to get to know the other person.
Yeah.
And it really shows me that, well, they're able to. It's not a matter of, some people like, oh, they don't want to open up. Well, no, a lot of people, there's two types of people here. The people that need to be asked questions and the people that just say everything to
Oh, yeah.
a lot of people that's the two people, right? They just keep saying things, they keep sharing things. But those people that share also don't share everything. It's like we were talking about in the beginning. You're sharing, so you don't get asked any questions.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really like when those three people come together, one person needs someone to ask them questions. The other person doesn't ask any questions. It just says everything. Those people aren't going to get to know each other.
Right. It has to be a dynamic
happen.
conversations of questions going back and forth.
Exactly. So I've been, exploring this a lot. I'm like, well, why is it the case? And like, what's going on here? And like, what questions? What are you talking about? We're talking about we play. We just talk about our work, our jobs, or we know each other from football, so we just talk about football. But you clearly, they are open to talk about other things. They're just not doing it. And the thing too here, what's making me really passionate about trying to do this is that trying to make the course is that people were also saying like, well, we're not real friends. Of course, you're not real friends. You're not really getting to know each other.
Yeah.
How are you going to be real friends? So, well, do you want to get to know each other? Do you want to be real friends? Sure, but we're not. It's just not happening. So either you're around people that don't want to ask questions or just don't know how. But the part's also on you. Like if I'm asking, in many cases and not, if I ask you a question, after you answer the question, you'll flip it back on to me and say, and you?
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Especially, with the mature, I'm not talking about younger teenagers and things like that, but like, 30 plus, most people are going to be like, and how about yourself?
Yeah. Unless they're extremely self-centered, but usually,
exactly. Unless they're, yeah, exactly. So, that's what's really like driving me and pushing me to kind of really build this course and have, open conversations and open up these different dialogues and like, who wants to have small talk? I don't know. Like, you're not getting it's not full of any, substance. You're not getting anywhere with it. It's not enriching. It's not thought provoking. It's not making me think. It's not making me learn something. It's not making me, gain something new. Because like people need to, I think everyone understands that we always need new novelty. We need new novelty, not just things. People always buy things, but we need new novelty of thinking too. Share something with me that maybe I didn't think about before. Ask me a question that maybe I wasn't considering. That engages the brain. That allows new novelty. That makes you like, oh, I want it more. I want some more of that.
Yeah, it pulls you in. It's like you send that tiny bait and then it like you could pull the string and get the fish out really.
Exactly. So it's like, well, as much as we need new novelty, we need new thinking. We need new ideas. We need new perspectives. As much as we need a new mind.
We need to be more active and not just passive and letting everything going through, actually using our brains and doing things, thinking things, I should say. Exactly. Challenging ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah. Another key thing that I really like to highlight, and throughout my course I've got it, and I've only like touched on like 2 or 3 things. Is like, so there's about like 18 steps.
Okay.
In the course. Obviously I've skimmed on it, but a big part of it, and I think a lot of people kind of struggle with this in conversation, is staying true to yourself as well. Do you know in times when you're having a conversation and you mention something about yourself and people are like, oh, me too. Hearing me too doesn't actually make someone kind of relate to you. It doesn't, you might think, oh, I'm relating to the person, we're on the same page here, but it doesn't. So a lot of studies are showing that it's not really someone feeling relatable by just saying, yes, me too.
How about saying something like, I feel for you, I had a really similar situation, and then say your thing in a short way? Or that's like you said earlier, it's switching it on you.
I wouldn't switching it on you, but kind of being like, again, that's switching it on you. But in times like when I was talking about not centering yourself in the conversation, there's also times of being relatable. Or someone asks you, puts it back on you. Have you been in a similar experience, or have you had
Right.
a similar experience? I would say more like I've had something similar, because I don't think you can ever say I've had the same or me
Right.
too or I felt the same way, because you don't know. It's
Yeah.
more
Also,
a matter of this is something that's kind of reminding me of your experience, maybe, or I'm thinking that it may be similar.
Also, everybody views the world differently. So no matter how similar it is, it's going to be tiny bit different. They have different experiences and everything just comes out different. Now, I have a question, a major question that I've been getting, like so many people have been telling me off on it. When somebody talks to me and tells me, let's say they're a problem, they happen, they're venting or something, okay? My tendency is to ask questions, right? To help them understand themselves better and so I can understand themselves better and not really respond, not like say, oh, that's so sad or like I feel bad for you or whatever. When somebody does it to me, I don't like that. But so many people tell me that you're not responding, you're not saying anything. Like someone gave me a really good example recently. She's like, if I were to tell you I was getting engaged and you just like didn't answer and just asked questions, like just were just listening to me and showing me that you were listening to me, but you didn't have any response, I would be like, what's going on? I just told you I got engaged. So same thing, when I'm telling you I lost my job or something really bad's happening, then I want some sort of response back. What sort of response would you recommend?
I understand what you're talking about there, in the sense that, if I'm telling somebody I have a worry or problem, I don't want to be like, that's so sad. That to me is like, don't say that.
Yeah,
That doesn't make any
exactly.
sense. And I think I understand. And with the feedback that you are getting, like I would say, if someone says, oh, I lost my job, it's like, I would be more like react. Don't feel sorry for someone, but react as if kind of happened to you. Like be like, oh shit, that's a reaction, not going, "Oh, I feel sad for you." "Oh, I'm so sorry." "Oh, I feel bad." Just
That's an
react.
interesting one. Okay. It shows that you feel, because I would like show that I'm feeling like that with just facial expressions and body language. But I guess not everyone picks it up as much as me. And then it's not like no answer. To me, that would be enough. If someone were to do that to me, just make a face, it would be like that reaction. But I really like the answer. It's awesome. Thanks for
Yeah,
that.
like no, like, and I've noticed that too with people as well, because like I know I don't like that, and then I observe it when people come to me and they tell me their problems and things, or flipped it back and I observe other people as well. That's another key thing here too. A lot You can learn a lot by watching the person you want to get to know in a conversation with somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
You just
People watching,
observe.
my favorite thing, watching them in
Yeah,
a conversation with someone is like
don't stare though, but like I know I like
my
I
big problem.
yeah, and I'll be like, what are you looking at? Nothing. Something up in the sky. Try
Hi,
and
like person far away.
yeah, just observe it. You don't have to know what they're saying. Like you can observe from a distance, obviously, people's privacy, but you can just observe their body react. Their reactions, the way they're expressing themselves. If they're reacting well to the person, like if they're stepping towards it or moving back. And you can observe a lot in that sense too. Like you can say you're in a group setting, it's not just you two, and someone says, "Oh, I lost my job." Just pause for a moment and see how your other friend, kind of what they do and react. They'll say, and then see the reaction of the friend who lost the job, and then take what you would do from there. Because that
Yeah.
will give you a little bit of a hint of, wait, this is what they like. This is what they clearly didn't like that response. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something different. But what I find with people who don't like no one wants, like, I don't like it, and I think a lot of people don't like it, someone feeling sorry for them.
Yeah,
Nobody
yeah,
likes
yeah.
that kind of feeling. So I would be like more expressive and be like, "Oh fuck. Oh shit, sorry, I don't fucking swear on this."
No
And you kind of react, and I would listen, because the person, like, especially when you have lost a job, it's like, no one wants to be bombarded with, "What are you going to do next? What are
right,
you,
right. No.
things like
It's
that,
rather
right?
just letting them let it just
Let
listen.
it go, let it out, especially if it's happened so recently, like the same day. Just let them kind of, they need to talk it out. They need to do all these things, you know, listen, casually maybe bring up other options.
Like, yeah, I think that's also, obviously it depends how close you are to that person and how often you speak to them. But if you know that you're going to speak to them tomorrow, right? Like in your partner, hopefully that, like for the day they come home from that, you don't want to go like, okay, now we need money. What you going to do? But rather hear them out a day or two later. Okay, now you're talking to them. Now what you're going to do, and then ask them those questions so that they could go and figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Like let them figure it out. Like I said, probe them to kind of come up with the solution themselves. What you think they should do again is not what's going to sit well with them.
Right.
So like let them kind of have the space, the time, probe them in a way to kind of come to the solution themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
So like yeah, that's probably I say would be the big key here. And yeah, like I would continue, like you said, you ask questions and you dive into it when someone reacts. When it's something like a good thing, I think it's easier to react and be like, oh, that's awesome. That's really good. Congrats. But
Right.
when it's something that isn't, obviously the reaction is going to be different. And I think in more cases than not, nobody wants someone, like I said, to feel sorry for them.
Right.
So the reaction like could come from, you're concerned. They're obviously talking to you about it. You can ask a lighter question, but not what would you do? But you can also, like I said, express yourself.
Right. Okay, so that's awesome. Great. Thank you. Thanks for that. And thank you so much for this. I absolutely love this. It's literally like what I do and was taken apart and just like pulled out of my brain. Okay, this is the way I talk to people without even thinking about it. So anyone who's listening to this, you're going to go get your course because you do an awesome job with this.
Awesome. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Did you enjoy that episode? Could you do me a personal favor and subscribe and leave a review? It would mean a lot to me. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.